Hey guys, so today we're going to do a video that actually was inspired by someone's comment that they left on one of my posts over on Twitter. This is definitely something that I've been meaning to do a video on for a while, but I think more recently it's probably something that's become more pronounced just because of the new way they're designing characters recently. I've been playing a lot of Proud. When I say I've been playing a lot of Proud, it's pretty much just today. This is, what's today? Today is Saturday, so the season's been up for about 4 days so far. I played a lot of Proud today. I think I started the day at like World Top 90 or something like that, because I did record a lot of videos yesterday and just ended up pretty highly ranked. And I wanted to get back on the grind for the Proud coins, and there's also a lot of missions to do Proud matches. So I did some Proud. I am very highly ranked now. I'm rank 8 in the world overall. I pretty much have a solid understanding of how Proud works. This is actually the first time I've really delved into Proud since the Daima meta, so prior to the anniversary. The team that I'm using, by the way, is the top team, so it's literally just Frieza Saga and Saiyan Saga put together on the same team. That's what most people I've encountered use. There are a few differences, but that's usually what people use, is Frieza Saga plus Saiyan Saga together. Now, what I want to discuss in this video is going to be character design and whether or not we think the developers consider both standard and Proud, just standard, or just Proud. And yeah, taking a look at some of the most recent characters we've gotten, we can probably deduce whether or not that's the case or not. But because there are definitely examples, and we'll get into this later, but there are examples of characters that are a lot better in Proud than standard. So I guess we could just start by talking about some of the main differences between standard and Proud. I'm going into this video assuming you guys understand what the differences between the rules are between Proud and standard. Obviously, team building is the biggest thing. In standard, you only use 3 characters, so you have basically just clear access to 3 bench slots that are designated bench slots. Whereas in Proud, you must utilize all 6 slots on your team, right? So it's a lot more stat exaggeration in Proud. When I say stat I guess the best way to classify this is it's going to be stat exaggeration versus stat inflation. In Proud, there is more stat exaggeration because you are relying much more on the stats that you have access to on your characters, as opposed to in Standard, where you have stat inflation, where you're just dumping tons and tons of Z abilities and Zenkai abilities in your characters, and your characters in Standard are going to be much more powerful than they are in Proud. But conversely, your opponent's characters are also going to be much stronger in Standard than in Proud. So, you know, when we talk about the defensive scaling of stats, and I'm not going to get into like the heavy math side of the game here, but typically speaking, defensive stats tend to scale much better with more stats than offensive stats. And the main reason is because of HP. HP is a stat that is not... like, there's no offensive equivalent to HP in the game. HP is purely a defensive stat. It's completely dictated on your equipment and your Z abilities. You cannot Zenkai buff an HP stat. I hope that day never comes. But HP is really what amplifies like all of the defensive stats. You have offensive stats, right? I mean, I guess it's going to be strike attack, blast attack, and then you can throw in some characters have like blue card damage. Usually it's like ultra characters have like awakened, ultimate, blue card damage on their Z abilities. Sometimes you'll have Z abilities where characters will have like 3% to strike arts damage inflicted for Sun Family or something like that. Like Dragon Fist, LF Dragon Fist Goku has that. But there's no offensive equivalent stat to HP. And the reason why that's so significant is because HP essentially is amplifying all of your other defensive stats, and it scales insanely well with also combo compensation. So when we take a look at a character that has, I mean, I guess we can go over to the character screen here. Let's just use, I don't know, Super Saiyan 4 Goku here as an example. So we are getting 40% to strike defense and 35% to blast defense from the Zenkai ability, and we're also getting 37% to strike defense from the Z ability. So this Super Saiyan 4 Goku is giving 77% strike defense to yellow Saiyans. well, he's giving 70% strike defense to this Goku in particular. So if we also factor in Bardock, I'm not even going to talk about his other stats, just simply the HP stat alone, that 13% max HP that he's giving to the well, I guess that, well, it would be Frieza in this case, right? Frieza's in the leader slot, so he's getting all these buffs. He's not getting the Zenkai buff, obviously, but I guess we could just say, so Frieza in the leader slot is getting 37% strike defense from the Super Saiyan 4 Goku Z ability. He's also getting 13% max HP from Bardock Z ability. Frieza, with that 13% extra HP, is able to use that 13% extra HP, and obviously with that extra HP, he's also getting additional value from the defense, because you can utilize more of the defense the more health you have. And then that also snowballs into combo compensation, and it just all synergizes super well together. So there's a huge difference, and the whole reason why I'm explaining this is because there's a huge, massive difference between defensive abilities in Standard versus Proud, and that to me really is what it comes down to. That is the main difference. I am 98% sure, like almost 100% sure, almost positive, that the main reason why they even conceived of the Proud PvP mode in the first place is exclusively to have a mode without Zenkai buffers. That to me is really the reason why they created the mode. I think they realized that Zenkai abilities, not even Zenkai characters in general, but specifically the Zenkai abilities, this has got to be one of like the dumbest things they've ever done. I personally think the Zenkai system is the worst thing they've ever done for this game ever. Whenever someone asks me like, what's the worst thing in the game's history, what's the biggest mistake they've ever made, I always say the Zenkai system is the worst thing they've ever done. At least in its current form, and the form that it was in when it first released. Even still, I would say, like, the fact that Zenkai abilities are this powerful, it just completely ruins, like, kind of like how team building is supposed to be in the game. And that's why they made Proud Mode. I'm basically 100% sure that's why they did it. But when you don't have those Zenkai abilities, it's just a huge, huge, huge difference when it comes to characters' abilities to survive and take hits. You have characters in Proud, when you're actually playing Proud versus Standard, that are taking like 2 times damage that they would take in Standard, basically on the same setup. It's just without Zenkai abilities. So that's really the main difference. So in theory, the biggest difference between Standard and Proud is just the defensive end is way less exaggerated, and there's way less stat bloat when it comes to defensive abilities. Offensively, on the other hand, it kind of feels like your characters are doing way more damage, but it's really just the lack of defense instead of the overwhelming amount of offense. That's the major difference there. So that's the main difference between Standard and Proud. Let's go back to the PvP screen here. So with that in mind, the question that I'm going to pose is, how can you create a character in this game and release the character with these 2 vastly different PvP modes without having the character being extremely overpowered in one mode and underpowered in another mode, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And the other question I want to ask is it even possible to make a character that is good in Standard but not good in Proud? I don't know if I can think of a single example of a character. To go over to the character list, I guess. Is there a single example in the entire game of a character that was like really, really good in Standard, but they weren't really good in Proud? Because I can point to a few examples of characters that I think are exceptionally good, or I guess were exceptionally good, and still are, I guess, in Proud, as opposed to Standard. Like it's much easier to be good in Standard and kind of like mediocre in Proud. Or sorry, other way around. It's really, really easy to be really good in Proud than it is to be really, really good in Standard, because in Standard, there's like less options. You're competing with characters that are just better, and you want to prioritize the characters that are going to make better use of Zenkai abilities. And that's a huge issue, right? So I can just give some examples of the other way around. So characters that I think are actually pretty good in Proud versus Standard. The first character is this guy, actually. I think this character pretty much was designed, and this is like the point of the video here. This guy, to me, was almost specifically designed for Proud mode. Now, is this character going to be running around and dominating Proud mode? No. He certainly isn't very strong in Standard. I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody agrees with that. I'm pretty sure we all are on the same page with that. But in Proud, when the enemies have way less defense, I think this guy can utilize a lot of his tools much more effectively in Proud, and especially in the case that this guy is a Zenkai character, right? He gets the benefit of his own Zenkai ability, so he's actually benefiting from that, where pretty much the entire enemy team would not be benefiting from that, right? As opposed to Standard, this guy is getting his own Zenkai ability, but then when he's attacking the opponent most likely is getting affected by some kind of Zenkai ability from the bench. But in Proud, that's not going to be the case. So I think this guy actually is pretty effective in Proud. I haven't actually tested him out myself, but I fought against him a few times. He was doing decent. He was doing decent. Not, anything crazy, but he definitely felt a lot more impactful to me in Proud than I've seen in Standard so far. Another character that I think we can talk about, and I've mentioned this many, many times. Let's see if I can find him here without having to filter anything. Scroll down a little bit. Here he is. Red Fusion Zamasu. The main reason why I think this guy is, he was, not so much anymore. You're never going to run into this guy, and even in Proud anymore. But one of the reasons why I thought this character is actually pretty effective in Proud is because of the Dragon Ball destruction that he has. And it's Dragon Ball destruction that you kind of have control over with the green card with his defensive unique gauge up. I thought it was actually a pretty effective Proud character. So to me, when this guy dropped, after using him, I actually did use him in Proud, and I fought against him in Proud a few times when he dropped. This is a very clear example of a character that almost exclusively, I think, was designed to be effective in Proud. Another character that I think is actually really, really effective in Proud, even more so than Standard, and I think this character is actually really good in Standard anyway, is Super Saiyan 2 Kefla. This character I actually just fought. Let me actually go back to this. I just fought the winner of last season's PvP season, this guy at the top. Really, really good player. He actually did use Kefla. He used Super Saiyan 2 Kefla. He crushed me in the first match. With Kefla was in like the damage, because she already does really good damage even in Standard. So when you think about how much damage she does in Standard, and then just pretty much add on top of that like 70% more damage in Proud because of all the Z abilities and Senkai buffs you're missing, Kefla is a crazy strong offensive character in Proud, and also she gets a lot more value from her Vanish Restoration in Proud because you don't have to worry about like using them all up super fast, and you have like 160 counts left of the match before you have to decide who wins. Kefla can kind of get away with using the Vanish Restorations, and then you only have 120 counts in the Proud match, so you don't have to go another 160 counts after you use them all up to finish out the fight. But Kefla was extremely powerful, and I've actually fought multiple people, not just this guy, but multiple other people also were using Super Saiyan 2 Kefla against me here today when I was grinding up Proud. There's the guy actually using Diamond down there. Okay. But yeah, I think Kefla is actually a character that's much more effective in Proud. I think when it comes down to it, pretty much every single character is going to be more effective in Proud than Standard, but there are a few characters that stand out more to me. So like when we're thinking about the design of characters, go back to the list here, do we think they consider Proud on the same level as Standard? Do we think they consider Standard first? And what I'm getting at with this, and I'm not going to make this video super long, but I think the way that I would phrase it is, because I don't think there's a character that could be good in Standard and not good in Proud, they should just simply consider Standard when they design characters. Does that make sense? And if they do take that stance moving forward, there's obviously still going to be characters where, just due to them having certain abilities, like I think a good example of this actually is like Ultra Beast Gohan and Ultra Beast Gohan and LF Goku and Frieza is actually the character I was going to bring up. I don't even know where they are in here, but Goku and Frieza and Beast Gohan both have Rising Rush counter unique gauges. I don't think those are things that were specifically conceived for Proud, because I actually don't even think Proud was a thing back when Goku and Frieza first came out. But because of how Proud works, with it only being 120 timer counts, the Rising Rush counter gauges are an extremely strong ability in Proud, because the main way Proud works, and I really am not a huge, to be honest, I am really not a huge fan of Proud. I am literally just grinding it to get the Proud coins and the missions done. This current meta in particular with Proud is really bad. It's literally 100% of the time it goes to timer. And if you get your rush guest, you pretty much guarantee to lose unless you are really dominating the opponent. So when you have a tool like a Rising Rush counter unique gauge like Goku and Frieza and Beast Gohan, it really does just completely change the entire game in Proud. But I don't think those mechanics were particularly created like in specifically for Proud. But I think you could definitely make an argument for a character like Fusion Zamasu. He was specifically designed for Proud. I think a character like Zenkai Red Final Form Cooler, who they clearly held back on, and my main intuition is telling me they probably did this for Proud just because of the way that he's designed. Like if they made this character as good as he needed to be like a dominant force in Standard, just because of the way that he works with a lock-in and basically just like a guaranteed snipe, this guy would be a real issue in Proud. Like, he really would be. But I don't know. It kind of feels like if they specifically focus on Proud for these characters, at the end of the day, they're just going to become underwhelming. So I think, at least if it was up to me, I would rather they prioritize balancing and designing these characters around Standard. Number one, it's just a far more popular way to play the game. I wish we had numbers on this, and I wish they published stats on like the percentage of players that participate in each of these modes, but I would have to say 85%, 90% of players who play PvP in this game play Standard over Proud. I would have to imagine something like that. So it just makes sense to me that they would consider Standard. I mean, literally in the name, it's Standard. I would hope that they would consider Standard the standard mode of the game. And if you're creating characters like new Ultra characters, new Legends Limited characters, these characters first and foremost should be able to participate and have a chance and be competitive in Standard mode, right? And I think, again, if you do that and you drop a character that is very, very good in Standard, as a byproduct of doing that, they will almost inevitably be good in Proud, right? Because I think there's just too much overlap between the modes, where if you make a character that's good in Standard, they're almost definitely going to be good in Proud. But if you make a character that's good in Proud, they might not necessarily be good in Standard. They could be good in Standard, but it's not guaranteed because there's more checkboxes they have to check off to be good in Standard. It's much more demanding mode. It's a much more restrictive meta in Standard as opposed to Proud, where you can kind of run more loose characters that probably wouldn't fare as well in Standard. But if they made, and here's the crux of what my argument's going to be here, and I might end with this because I don't want this to be super long, but if they make every single character in the game from this point forward, if they design them with Standard in mind, and they design them to be competitive in Standard and good enough to compete with the best characters in Standard, that will just result in more viable characters in Proud as well. Right, wouldn't it? More good characters in Standard equals more good characters in Proud. That should be the way it works. So I think them looking at Proud and designing characters to be good in Proud, and maybe not necessarily looking at Standard as the main one, as kind of like the first checkbox to fill out. Okay, character's good in Standard, check. Now let's take a look at Proud. I think it's, for a lot of these characters, I think it's kind of the other way around. Okay, this character's good in Proud, check the box. Let's look at Standard next. No. It should be the other way, right? And there's no confirmation that's actually how they do this, but I don't think we'd get characters like Fusion Zamasu. I don't think we'd get characters like Evolution Blue Vegeta. I don't think we'd get characters like Demon King Piccolo. Where's Demon King Piccolo? I don't even know where he is. Probably right in front of me. I'm just missing him. Here he is. We probably wouldn't get characters like this. We probably wouldn't get characters like Kid Goku. We probably wouldn't get Zenkais like LF Final Form Cooler if they specifically look at Standard as the as like kind of the first checkpoint of the character. Does the character meet the requirements to be good in Standard? If the answer is no, then you got to tweak them to be good enough in standard. If the answer is yes, okay, then you can look at some of the abilities and the mechanics that the character has to kind of maybe make them a little bit more oriented for proud if that's the goal of the character. But the character, I think, baseline has to be good in standard. That should be the gold standard moving forward. Character good in standard, then we can start worrying about proud, but I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. The only reason why I'm really doing this again is just because somebody made a comment talking about this and kind of wondering if that's the stance that the developers are taking for some of these characters. Are they prioritizing proud for some of these units? Are they looking at some of these characters? I think it probably actually more so pertains to like 1% Sparkings as well, but some of these LF characters, like again, Evolution Blue Vegeta is actually a pretty big one, I think. This guy probably was looked at to be a proud character, I think. But it would have been much more helpful to the game overall in standard if he was actually like a really good and strong competitive character in standard. It would have changed the whole game. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think of this. Do you think that the developers view proud as like its own thing for characters to be good in and thrive with? And let me know your thoughts on do you think the developers should be looking at standard first, and then after they check the box off that the character is good in standard, then they can move on to proud? To me, that's really what they should be doing, but I'm interested in hearing what you guys have to say about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next one.